Hear these words from Emily Dickinson. Love is anterior to life, posterior to death, initial of creation, and the exponent of breath. Let us worship together.
Good morning. On behalf of the entire congregation, I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Shenandoah Valley. I am Corey Barnes, your worship associate for today. We wish to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Shawnee and the Manahoac tribes who lived in this area prior to the arrival of European settlers who then claimed the land for their own. We gather today with our doubts as well as our convictions, with our fears and our hopes, with our failures and our aspirations, with our sorrows and our joys. Whether you're joining us for the first time, or you've been a member or a friend for many years, we are glad you are here. Whatever faiths you have known, if any, whatever backgrounds, whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived here, you are welcome. Now, as Nancy comes forward to light our chalice, let us all say together, here and from our homes, the words for lighting our chalice. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to say, to share. I invite you to join us as we say our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help our neighbor. To these ends, we covenant one with another. Now please rise and body your spirit as we sing our opening song, number 1009 in the Teal hymnal, Meditation on Breathing.
Thank you so much. We're going to do a little experiment this morning, everybody. I'm going to try and teach this so that we can sort of dwell in it. We're going to do it a cappella, but you've got the notes when I breathe in. Okay, that's good. So how many of you, by show of hands, are familiar with this tune? Oh, good. So not too much teaching needs to go on. That's great. Let's try this first part. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace, the top line. We'll just do that a couple of times, and we'll do the second line, and so forth and so on until you got it, and then we'll just dwell in the space of doing music together. All right? And when I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. One more time. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. The second line for the higher voices in the room. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. Let's try that together. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Again. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. And then for the lower voices, you get to just stay on one note. It's kind of easy. It goes like this. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Very good. Let's actually start with just that low part, okay? Get a little rhythm going here with breathe in, breathe out. And we'll sort of take it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe. Now the high part, bring it in. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Now the melody. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Keep going. When I breathe in, a little louder. I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out. One more time. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Stop the top line. When I breathe in, keep going in, I breathe in peace. Low point, keep going. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Top voices stop, just the low voice. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe. A little quieter, everybody, all together. Very good. Thank you. You may have a seat.
Good morning. The story for all ages today is in a little book, so we're not putting it up on the screen, but believe me, there's some cute little pictures. And the name of the book is, What is America? We'd all like to know that. What is America about? I really want to know. Is it just some place that we live? A place where tourists come? Is it about the 4th of July, I really love that day. I like to watch the fireworks. We cheer and shout, hooray! Is it about red, white, and blue? Is it about our song? Is it about our pledge we learned? I say it loud and strong. Is it about our grand old flag that flies so proud and high? Is it about the bald eagle that soars across the sky? No, that's not all America is. While all these symbols are quite nice, there's only a small part. America was built on faith, and that's how it started. It's more than just a song we sing of amber waves of grain. America survived it all through every growing pain. It's more than just the way we think. Sometimes we disagree. That's why we vote. We have a voice. That's part of being free. The people in this melting pot, the ones who lend a hand, the ones who dream and work so hard, they make this land so grand. Okay, now I get it. The pledge, the flag, the fireworks, the anthem we adore, they represent America. But there is so much more. Thank you.
Our words for meditation today come from Robert R. Walsh. When the great plates slip and the earth shivers, and the flaw is seen to lie in what you trusted most, look not to more solidity, to weighty slabs of concrete poured, or strengths of cantilevered beams, to save the fractured order. Trust more the tensile strands of love that bend and stretch to hold you in the web of life that's often torn but always healing. The shifting plates, the restive earth, your room, your precious life, they all proceed from love, the earth on which we dwell together.
Yes, that sound came from this body. It's yeah, it's kind of the way it goes, isn't it? By show of hands, how many of you have been across country? Ooh, okay. How many of you have driven across country? Okay. So this is going to resonate with you, I hope, at least. The reason I wanted to start this talk with putting sort of things in the travel perspective is because to speak about patriotism and being a patriot in the United States is massive. And this country is enormous, as you would know if you have driven across this country. I've driven across country 6 times, 5 times on my own. And to talk about patriotism in the context of the United States is to confront the physical enormity of the country itself. When you're driving from New England, around the time you get to Ohio, you think, okay, will this end? and then you realize that you're only just barely 1/4 of the way. Then from Ohio to the middle of Kansas is another 1/4, and that marks halfway. And then you realize you have to get into Utah, before you're starting the final leg of the journey, and then you just want to give up. And of course, you don't. And the people are so vastly different everywhere you go. They have different ways of welcoming you or making it clear that you're not welcome. I had my tires slashed in St. Louis on one trip. But I was also welcomed with open arms by friends at Shiprock on the Navajo Nation. The roads are all different and sometimes terrifying, especially with all the trucks. But then there are roads that are completely empty for miles. I remember being on one stretch of highway between Idaho and Utah at one point, thinking that if I had a problem with my car, I would be sunk because there was no one on the road and not a sign of gas in sight. That was before the smartphones and all that, so yeah, good luck. The handy-dandy AAA triptych, do you remember those? Oh yeah, okay. That's all I had going for me. I stayed in places as well that I know my parents couldn't have stayed 50 years before. Vast. The biggest lesson that these travels taught me was that the United States is an enormous country made up of thousands of tiny little villages. This congregation is one village, though you may not think of it as such. You all live in a wide range of places, but when you come together in this space, you are a village. There are not just a few, but thousands of other villages, literal and more conceptual, sprinkled around us now. Those villages are built on ideologies and beliefs and morals and families and relationships. Each one is built on people. They are everywhere. So when we say we are patriotic, it raises the question, what are we actually patriotic about? Are we including just the people in our village, in that patriotism, or do we include more? In theory, I think we all like to think we are talking about much more than just the person sitting in the pew next to us. We like to think that when we talk about being patriots, we're accessing the vast thing called America and affirming our belonging in that equation. So the academic geek in me wants you to consider this entry about the word patriot from etymology.com. Patriot, noun. 1590s, compatriot, from French patriote, 15th century, and directly from late Latin patriota, fellow countryman, 6th century, from Greek patriotes, fellow countrymen, from patrios, of one's fathers, patris, fatherland, from pater, genitive patros, father, see father, etc., etc. But also, in that same definition, meaning, quote, loyal and disinterested lover and defender of one's country and its interests. It's attested from the circa 1600, but it became an ironic term of ridicule or abuse from the mid-18th century in England, so that the early dictionary author Samuel Johnson, who at first defined it as one whose ruling passion is the love of his country, in Johnson's fourth edition, he added, it is sometimes used for factious disturber of the government. The American Revolution, the beginning of which we celebrate with the July 4th remembrance of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, came at a time in the Western world when Europe was in an unthinkable amount of transition. Beyond the multiple wars of the 18th century, the British crown had been restored and deposed and restored again and filled with a quick succession of different monarchs and houses until arriving at King George III in 1760. The French crown, which had been surprisingly stable, was rife with corruption and greed, and had arrived at Louis XVI, which wouldn't end well. The Netherlands and Spain were in decline from their prior 2 centuries, dominating international trade and the fledgling colonies of the Americas, North America, the Caribbean, and Canada specifically. They were all proving to be a lot less manageable from afar. While this was indeed the Western Age of Enlightenment, geopolitically, it was utter chaos. Oh. And more slaves were imported from Africa during this period than at any other time in the history of the Atlantic slave trade. The Age of Enlightenment is generally identified between 1685 and 1815, and it was during that period that some 8,083,973 people were trafficked from Africa, which accounts for nearly 65% of the total 12 million people that we can account for being trafficked in the slave trade between the 15th and the 19th centuries. We think about great Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke, Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and John Adams, and they inspire our most egalitarian, we the people, and patriotic cores. But 4 of these 5 men had direct connections with enslaved people that they had the ability to personally emancipate or at least resist enslaving. But they did not. So much for the Age of Reason. Of course, the project of American Revolution was not about enslaved people or indigenous people. It was about white European men. And to be fair, with their focus on trying to be the best white European men they could possibly be, the great thinkers among that group coalesced around a revelatory and revolutionary idea for a new nation born out of a British colony that would be built on a principle of freedom and democracy and dignity that had never before been seen by white European men. And so that's what they did. It is their brilliant work that we inherit today, even if it wasn't built for all of us. The people who came up with the Declaration of Independence, the 56 men of the First Continental Congress, were themselves a fairly select village. They were a governing village. They were an elite village. They had land, and if they only had limited education, they were in a public position of power to advocate for people in their localities. They were smart, yes, but mostly they were privileged. And they built their brilliant system around that privilege with the object of others aspiring to that same kind of position. They desired no king or monarch, but rather to empower all the people, the ones they regarded as full people, to have the kingly agency of self-rule. The project was never about the average American. It was, and it is still, about the aspirational American. Particularly true when you consider that the average American could not necessarily be a factor, particularly in a place like Virginia, where of the 500,000 inhabitants in 1776, some 200,000 of that number were enslaved and free Africans. The actor John Cena made a YouTube video called "We Are America" for the Love Has No Labels campaign that is a useful illustration of this puzzle. In the video, he points out that the average American is actually female because there are more women in the country and on the planet than men. The average American is likely financially lower middle class due to the wealth gap, and there is a 48% chance that they identify as a person of color. It's a powerful, powerful video with a really awesome message that asks the same question I'm building toward here. If you consider yourself a patriot, Are you picturing yourself marching alongside a rosy-cheeked, blue-eyed sprite with a fife and a three-corner hat? Or are you imagining yourself in a room full of middle-aged, working-class Latinas? Does your personal sense of patriotism bind you to that community of Latinas as much as it binds you to the myth of the Founding Fathers? In 1776, there were 56 delegates representing 2.5 million people of the proto-United States. That makes one delegate for every 45,000 people. And this limited number of decision makers is by design because, well, villages. But today, with a population of over 330 million and only 435 representatives, we have just one representative for every 758,621 people. The members of the First Continental Congress were not deeply invested in truly representing the many literal villages of their respective colonies. Rather, inspired by the lofty, aspirational thinking of the High Enlightenment period and a healthy dose of ego and paternalism, they aspired to do what they believed would be right for the village they knew best and for the posterity that they could imagine. This is what we live today. This is what we pledge allegiance to today. The borders of the country have not expanded, but things have become much more vast, more villages. But while at the same time, technology tells us that we're connected. Living in this information age is deceptive. Because even with all the gadgets and algorithms, our little villages aren't actually connected. We don't know our neighbors. We don't trust people we can't understand in language or in custom or politics. Not any more than Jefferson, Franklin, or Adams did. We are still villages. And so, every summer it is the bizarre concept of loyalty and an aspirational belief in a mysterious shared potential that we call patriotism that we fall back on. It may be helpful to remember that the biggest issue throughout much of the early part of the American colony and even after the Revolution and independence was the role the church and, as Madison put it, the right of conscience played. But our 21st century understanding of the separation of church and state warps our hindsight. We are living through a time when churches have tried and sadly sometimes succeeded in determining legislation. But the system built to support that wall of separation was never designed to protect government from the church. It was created to protect the church from government. Roger Williams, in establishing the Providence Plantation, was the first to coin the phrase a wall of separation while seeking safety for the Baptists from Puritans. And then Jefferson used similar language in his writing about religious freedom in the Virginia Constitution, which he hoped would be replicated in the US Constitution, but this was objected to and replaced with the language we have now in the First Amendment. Jefferson eventually does make his position on the wall of separation clear in a letter to the Danbury Baptists after he is elected president in 1800. But it is important to note that they had written to him hoping his policies would protect their ability to worship without the burden of supporting the Congregational Church in Connecticut. Again, protecting the church from government. Part of the reason the authors of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution wanted to keep religion of all kinds pure and unsullied by politics was because the one thing they knew they needed to keep a new nation together was a loyalty to something that was different from, yet as powerful a uniting force as religion. This thing we call patriotism. Their goal was a loyalty that would transcend factions of belief by providing for their vision of freedom of body and conscience. So I'm going to leave it there for now, though I will revisit these ideas a lot between now and November. As we come away from this July 4th and start the long slog toward the elections, we would do well to consider our sense of patriotism. What do our villages look like? Who do we see as an average American? Can we embrace a patriotism that transcends and is inclusive of our disparate and diverse beliefs? Who and what are we loyal to? This is our real task. While the United States may not always feel like the land of the free for all of us, we can and must do the tough work of confronting ourselves with ourselves and be willing to engage this question of loyalty head on. That is the only way we live into being a true home of the brave for all. May it be so.
Thank you, Reverend. Gotta say, when I got here this morning, I didn't realize I would be hearing the wise words of John Cena. Very true, though. The purpose of this church is to encourage all who gather to grow more generous in spirit and in action. We will now gratefully receive an offering to sustain this self-supporting church and its ministries within and beyond its walls. If you happen to be watching online, we hope that you'll consider making an offering at our website, uushenandoah.org. If you're visiting us today, you are our welcome guest. Please feel free to let the basket pass you by. PNC comes forward again. Let's all say together, hear from our homes the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of our community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts till we meet again.
Thinking about patriotism, thinking about what it means to grow into who we are as individuals, as communities, as villages, and as a nation, I reflected on this poem I wrote a few years ago. It's titled, "This Rose." The purpose of the open flower is not about the present hour. Instead, it hints at legacies and beauty's hope for what can be. We too are called to be the flower, the buds that buds along the fragile bower, where beauty, hope, and what can be, for now, may be but filigree. So where the rose in spring may flower, bathed in sun and quenched by shower, we grow to show posterity, bright blooming through adversity. Go in peace.